Hi, it's Alexis, the Avoidant therapist. Today in this video, we're going to talk about love, but we're going to talk about how we can define love. So obviously, my definition of love would be very personal and would be different than your definition of love, and that's fine. Now, the problem is that when we are trying to assess the quality of our relationship, the potential of a relationship, sometimes we don't know where to start. We compare with our previous relationships, we compare with our friends, but there's no framework in a sense. That's the idea of this video, is to provide, based on the Steinberg theory, this kind of framework. In the Steinberg theory, you have three major elements that you need to have in your relationship. Bear with me, I'll explain everything. These are the three elements that you need to have in any romantic relationship: intimacy, passion, decision, and commitment. And those three components will create these 7 types of love. Let me explain. If you only have intimacy, that's one type of love. If you only have decision, that's one type of love. If you have intimacy and commitment, you have another type of love. Okay, so that triangle will make those 7 types of love. The reason it matters, and the reason I want to make this video, is because sometimes, as I discussed in the intro, we are in denial. We fail to really read the situation. We think that it's okay, that we are treated fairly, that there's potential in the relationship. Very often, people watching my videos or my clients, they're confused. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to analyze their situation. The whole point of this video is for you to gain clarity using this model. There are plenty of other models. I think this one is quite helpful because it's very simple to use. It will help you get a head start on how you can analyze and move forward with confidence. So I'm going to list out the 7 types of love and explain in a second. When you only have intimacy, it's a liking sort of relationship. So that could be deep friendship, but without the romance. Infatuation is passion only. Okay, so usually the beginning of any romantic relationship are like this. It's a crush. It's something short-lived. Then you have the empty love. So it's basically usually when it's one-sided, or when you have a long-term relationship, but you take your partner for granted, you become complacent. And that marriage, this relationship will become stagnant. You only have the commitment. We stay together for the kids. We have no intimacy. There's no passion. We just stay together because we have to, kind of dynamic. The romantic love is intimacy and passion. This is the very important one. This is where you feel heartbroken. When you have intimacy, when you have passion, but it's not committed. And I'll come to that in a second. The companionate love is intimacy and commitment. And that could be long-term friendship, could be marriage. But again, we are missing the passion. So these relationships, if they are romantic relationships, are at risk. The fatuous love, which is not very common, is passion and commitment. So the romance without the deep emotional connection, it's not very common. The ideal relationship, and again, you can make your own, because within the component of intimacy, passion, and commitment, you have your own definition of intimacy, commitment, and passion. Is when you have the 3, right? And he called that the consummate love. Okay, so going back to this triangle. Intimacy is liking. When you have intimacy and commitment, it's companionate. So that's the kind of love. Commitment and passion, fatuous love, etc., etc. Pause the video, reflect, and I'll give you in a second a few things that you can think of, and assess, maybe measure from 1 to 10 where you are in terms of intimacy, where you are in terms of commitment, where you are in terms of passion. And the 1 or the 2 with the lowest score will indicate, obviously, where you need to work on. And assess whether your partner is also willing to work on those aspects. So, assess, reflect on which component your relationship had. Identify what's missing. Ask yourself if you did, both of you, value the same aspect of love. Maybe you're really into intimacy, and you couldn't get those needs met by your partner. So assess if it's important. And again, it's very personal. The point is, when you determine whether a partner is the right partner for you, you have to have a clear idea of your needs and whether this person can meet your needs. Obviously, it's down to effective communication. You have to express those needs. You have to be clear, to respect also their style, whether it's an attachment style or their personal style. But you have to express those needs and figure out whether they can meet your needs. So step number 1, you have to identify your relationship type. And if it's not the optimal love, the companionate love, figuring out why it is. So if it's liking, if you're just friends, if your infatuation, was it only about attraction? So figure out what's missing and how you can work on those things. Okay. For example, if it's romantic, and I think my audience or you might be falling into this category, strong emotions, very deep intimacy, but the commitment is lacking. And I'm going to talk about avoidant in a second, because it's the avoidant therapist channel. What was missing? So is it the lack of intimacy? Is it the lack of passion? Is it the lack of commitment? The problem is that if you're missing one of those components, you feel frustrated. You will ask for more. You probably have protest behaviors if you have an anxious attachment style and want to get those needs met. Now, the real question is obviously to assess whether this person will be able to meet those needs. Okay, so if we're in a situation of anxious avoidant, if you're the anxiously attached person, you have those needs for intimacy, for passion, for commitment. Where is your partner at the moment? Can they work on those aspects, on those elements? Because they form what needs to be the ideal relationship. Now, as I said, I will discuss about avoidant in a second. Those 3 components in a relationship are usually quite difficult to meet in terms of an avoidant personality. Intimacy, they usually have a deep fear of intimacy, or they struggle with intimacy. Being vulnerable, sharing their fears is something very, very difficult. It used to be very difficult for me. It's still difficult sometimes. Also, physical intimacy, sex, sometimes it's like taboo. They don't want to talk about that. Again, it depends on the person, but those things could also create some form of tension in this relationship. Commitment, this is a big one. The reason avoidants have a hard time with commitment is because when I commit to a decision, I basically choose, I have to make a choice. Therefore, I lose my independence. If I choose you, I don't choose someone else. If I choose to go there, I choose not to go somewhere else. And so the problem is that as they have a deep need for independence, when you make a decision, any decision in your life, you lose a form of freedom, right? Because you're committed to that decision, which can be dangerous if you, for example, want to make the relationship progress from the honeymoon phase to more of a compassionate phase of the relationship where you need to be committed, where you need to have the talk, where you need to discuss about the future, etc., etc. And passion, it really depends, it varies, but it's really about the inconsistency. So that's why you might have at the beginning what we would refer to as love bombing. They're very intense, they're very engaged, and then they disappear, they pull back as things get serious. So that's the thing where you have sometimes the push-pull dynamic. So again, those 3 components, quite hard to get if you're dating an avoidant. That doesn't mean that they can't give you what you need, right? But it's important to assess that, hey, guess what? The reason we struggle with dating avoidant is because they have a hard time meeting those needs, okay? Especially because that's the cherry on the cake. The problem as well with avoidant is that they are conflict adverse. They avoid conflict. So when you feel that your needs aren't met in terms of intimacy, commitment, and passion, you would want to discuss those things, right? You want to have an honest, mature conversation about those things. What happens when you do that with an avoidant? They disappear. They pull back. And that's the problem, is that we want to find the right framework to have the right conversation with them so they can understand your needs, they can understand how they can overcome their fear of commitment, of intimacy, or their inability to be passionate or to invest consistently. And these are the key element of what I do with my clients, is like creating that secure base. Creating that secure base where you lead the way, right? You show them what intimacy means, what commitment is, because they don't have a clear idea, because the way they they grew up, the way they were raised, that was not necessarily the right approach, the right secure model on how you should love someone, how you should also express yourself in the context of a relationship. So for example, being vulnerable, opening up, these are something they need to learn. The point is not necessarily to teach them. You shouldn't be their therapist, that's very important, but you can be the role model. You can show them how you do it. And if they love you, if they have a little bit of empathy, they will get it and they will understand what's in it for them. So it's very important, and anytime you do something and you expect your partner to react, he or she needs to figure out what's in it for me. Like any other aspect in life, even in the business world, it's very important if you want to convince someone, if you want someone to buy in, they need to be clear on what's in it for me. And that's why you might end up in that dynamic where you feel your needs were overlooked, when you have to chase them, when you have to get that reassurance. Also, it's important to understand about the attachment style, because that tells you about that their fear of dependence, their fear of commitment is not so much about you, right? It's about their inner fear. It's very personal. And if you broke up recently with an avoidant partner, maybe that's a chance for you to reframe the breakup. It's because of those attachment patterns. It's because of the clash of those three components they couldn't meet, or one of the components they couldn't give you, which are the key to have a sustainable, successful relationship. If you can't have those three, and I'm not saying like every relationship, my relationship and the ideal relationship would have 10 out of 10 on those elements, but it's very important to be aware of those elements so you can measure. Something you can't measure, right? Like like the business world, if you can't measure something, you can't really assess and sort of improve it. If I can't measure the progress, how can I make sure that I'm going in the right direction? That's all about clarity. That's really, if there's something you need to understand, is like this video, this framework, and everything that I share here is to help you gain more clarity on your situation. Going back to the step 3, you use that insight to heal, right? It's about moving forward. It's about learning about the insights on how can I detach myself from those fears, from this anxiety. Around the loss, where does it come from? Whether it's about the loss of emotional intimacy, right? If you don't have that, that's why you have lingering sadness, lingering feelings, because you feel this is something that you can't get right now since you broke up with your partner. Also, assess and recognize the gaps. The point is, the grieving process is always the same. The healing process is always the same. It's all about reaching an acceptance, a level of this was not right for me. That's what I'm doing. That's my role. Making videos online is to help you find answers so you can move forward. Maybe there's a chance for you to get back with your ex. Maybe the partner that you're dating is the right one. The point is to gain clarity and make decisions based on those insights. And the step 4 is paving the way, right? What type of love do you want moving forward? So it's back to what I discussed about what's the ideal relationship, right? Are you more into passion? Are you more into emotional connection? How does it look like? Okay, and be very clear about that. Obviously, you want to focus on a relationship where you have 3 components. When you start a relationship, the commitment element comes after. When you start dating, it's about passion, it's about intimacy, right? Passion first, then intimacy comes, and then you have commitment. So unfortunately, between 0 to a year of relationship, it's very hard. You can have subtle sign of commitment, but it's very hard to expect the other to be fully committed. And that's the hardest part when you date an avoidant. At the beginning, you feel, okay, I'm on track, right? It looks like the right relationship. It looks like a secure relationship. But then when you include the commitment element, this is where they pull back. And that's why it's important to create that secure base. So you don't trigger them. You can help them to overcome their fear of commitment and develop the relationship with him or her. The point is, and if you broke up and you want to date someone else or you want to move on, it's also very important to recognize those elements. The reason you're heartbroken right now is because you failed to recognize that you didn't have all the components to make you happy. Maybe you didn't make the decision to break up. Maybe they took the decision to break up. they made the decision to break up with you, but you have to reflect on the relationship and assess whether actually was it really working for me. Because usually, even if you didn't make the decision, that relationship fundamentally was not necessarily the right one for you. And that's the thing you have to come at peace with. That's the thing you need to analyze clearly. If you want that clarity, if you're confused about your situation, you really want to start moving forward, to start healing, to assess whether you should get back with him or not, or her or not, have a look. I did a mini course that you can download today to help you heal and move forward using the Steinberg's log theory. If you have any question on this, let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you next time. Take care.